This is today's business leaders. Actionable advice from real-world professionals. And now here's your host, Gabe Arnold.
All right, on today's show, I'm very excited that one of my longtime mentors, that virtually anyway, in the beginning, Brian Kurtz is on the show, and he's going to talk to us about his book and some other amazing life lessons, I'm sure. So welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks, Gabe. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So before we started the actual recording here, I was talking to Brian and telling him, like, I kind of traced back how I find people and how I follow them. I'm not sure if it was through Kevin Rogers that I got on one of your webinars you did, or maybe through John Carlton, but it's always funny how the circles are pretty tight and how everybody's looped together once you get to know everybody.
Yeah, it's like I guess you can say the internet's really big, but there's only one internet or something. But yeah, it's we're all connected.
Yeah, and it makes me think a lot about what you've talked about for years, like on your blog and your email, newsletters that I get and everything. But you talk about in the book as well, is that there's no competition. It's all it's all collaboration. It's all coexistence. And I feel like from everything that I've read in the book, and as long as I followed you, that's been a tenet for a long time. And I think that's a massively different focus than a lot of people have, because they're always worried about their competitors, or it becomes like a negative competition. And what I'm wondering is, if you can share with the audience, like, how did you first just come upon that, and then you decided that was your actual true values you wanted to follow, instead of being scared of the competitor, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was fortunate because I was a list manager. A lot of your people don't even know what that is, so I'll tell you what it is. In the direct mail world in the 1980s and before, there was something called a list manager, which, if you had a list, you represented the list in the marketplace, and brokers and mailers and people who wanted to use it. And it occurred to me that that if there was a mailer out there, like a direct mail company out there, that wanted to use my list and wanted to use another list, that it was an and, not an or, that you weren't mailing just one list. So it occurred to me, like, well, clearly I should get together with the other list managers, and we should talk about how we sell our lists. And not that we're going to sell them together, but that we can share best practices and that type of thing. And so it was a luxury, that we were both, if my list works and your list works, we both stand to make some money. So why not share information? So it was easy for me. And then as I got into the business, further, and on the mailer side, I'm like, well, why doesn't this sharing take place there as well? I mean, if everybody thinks, they have the deep, dark secret of whatever, and you just don't. And I mean, there are certain things that can be proprietary, but it's amazing how the people who think they've got it all, and they think they've got it dialed in, and they better not share it with anybody, are generally the ones that don't last, and the ones who share last. Now, this is not 100%. I mean, there are situations where the non-sharers are, doing fine. And there are a lot of situations where the people who share everything go out of business. But in general, over 40 years, I would say that if I'm going to make a mistake on sharing too much or not sharing, I'm going to share too much, because it's what's going to come back. And then the other piece of that, in the book, I talk about 100-0. And the idea is, if I'm sharing with you and you're sharing with me, I'm not keeping score. I'm not, if you give me 3 things and I give you 2 things, that's okay. And so once you decide that, competition is coexistence, you have to kind of shed the notion that whatever I give you, you have to give me. And again, in the internet world, when I got involved, like with affiliate deals and things like that, the idea of you gave me this many names, now you owe me 3 mailings to get me that amount of names. Yeah, there's some truth to that, but ultimately I got some names, you got some names, we're both happy, let's move on. And it doesn't have to be an equal split. But it's hard to get those concepts out there and not sound like I'm being I'm trying to tell people that it's crazy to not do this, but it's really served me well over my career.
Yeah, I remember when you talked about 100% zero in a newsletter 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, I'm sure that's a principle that you've taught for years at this point, but I remember that what really stuck with me about that is it's really simple to live that way. Like, it eliminates me trying to keep track of, did you do me a favor back?
Yeah.
Or like, it really impacted me at just a personal relationship level, even with my friends, because you talked about in one of the letters, and I know you talked about in the book, that you always felt like you're the guy that had to reach out to your friends, and like and it was bothering you at some point. And I don't remember if you arrived to it or somebody else pointed out to you, like, well, just go all the way. Don't worry about if they're going to meet you halfway or at 20% or whatever.
Right.
And I think that was such a powerful part of the book, and just a freeing moment when people realize, oh, I don't have to hold back in what I'm giving, and I don't have to keep track. I can just give and reach out, like, and I don't need to try to play some game that nobody knows the rules for, like, Brian didn't call me back so I can't email him again, or like,
right.
It seems petty. And man, I feel like that was just one of the hugely powerful thing for people to realize is it frees you when you decide to go all the way. It's
I mean, Adam Grant wrote a book called Give and Take, and I didn't invent this. I mean, this is something that's been around, but in business, you don't see it that often. And what Adam Grant said is that there are 3 types of people. There are givers, takers, and matchers. Yep. And so a giver is, an unconditional giver. A taker is, just a taker. And then a matcher is, 50-50, and I think the key is you said it already, but just to repeat it, that to never use the term, I'll meet you halfway, because as soon as you start putting some definition on it, you're not free to give, fully. And, there are some points in my life where, I'll give and give and give, and I get nothing back. Not that I'm looking for anything, but it does feel like it's just a taking relationship, and you got to get out of that. And what Grant talks about in his book, which is, I highly recommend the book, and he says, who do you think the least successful people in the world are? They're givers. Who do you think and then you think, all right, that this book is not the book that I thought it was. And then they say, who are the most successful people? Oh, they're also givers.
I remember that line.
It's how you give. It's how. So you don't want to be a chump, but you don't want to be keeping score. And there's a delicate balance. I can tell you over 40 years in business that I've gotten taken advantage of in in whatever definition you want to give that. But I'll take that over a few times that I get taken advantage of for all the richness that you get from living 100-0. So that's there are some downsides, but they get outweighed pretty clearly.
Yeah. And I would agree. And like, it's very, like, again, this is obviously a theme of how you've lived and grown your business, but it's just like, there's no competition. It's just coexistence, like freely share information, freely go 100% of the way. Like when we don't restrict information, like, which is essentially what we're talking about, where we don't restrict what we're giving, everything works. It's like good circulation, good blood flow in your body. Anytime you start to try to restrict it or hold it back or get all tense about something.
That's a good metaphor.
Yeah, you can't guarantee the health of the systems anymore because something's getting tight or strained or stressed, I
remember in the early days of when I was in the 1980s, when I was just starting out, that the ultimate company in direct mail was the Reader's Digest. The
Yeah.
Reader's Digest was like, you know, just, and the Reader's Digest was, they were doing a lot of sophisticated modeling techniques. They were doing, you know, they had a huge database, and they restricted their employees from speaking at conferences, from sharing the wealth. And ultimately you know, I guess the proof is in the fact that they've gone bankrupt 3 times, and, you know, and it's, but I mean, I use that as an example of proving why competition is coexistence. I'm sure there are many examples of companies that didn't share and are thriving and are doing okay. But then there's the other piece, and there's it's sort of the karma piece. And I think that, you know, I don't know, you're only going through life once. And why not? You're not going to, by holding stuff back, as you said, it's the restrictive nature. And I think ultimately, you know, your blood flow is going to, you know, is going to restrict, and you're going to have a heart attack or you're going to have a stroke. Whereas if you're free with it, yeah, you may give away some stuff that you might not have wanted to give away, but it's a freeing, as you said, a freeing experience. So, you know, and I can, you know, there are a lot of specifics in business where this kind of sharing just is incredible. In fact, when I was selling lists, like I would sell to the list brokers, and the list brokers, you know, that was my livelihood. But I found that, and I realized this early on, that if I spent more time with the other list managers, who didn't want to spend time with me, because why would they spend time with me? Because they couldn't sell to me, and vice versa. But I found, first of all, I wanted to see what my competition looked like, and it was pretty weak. And I learned what they were doing, and I carved out a path, and ended up being, you know, a really good list manager. But I think that when I did get together with list managers who wanted to get together with me, the exchanging was fantastic. So, you know, it's an open-ended thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the karmic value of it is obviously unmeasurable, because you may help a few people for free, or give more than you should, and maybe get a little worked over on it, but it's not that's just once in a while. Whereas I can look at so many, you know, valuable relationships that I have that came out of me happily helping for free, or sending a referral, or things like those turn into the right ones, and not by our selection, but just the right ones end up to be huge opportunities that end up growing the business. And a good relationship is worth a lot more than money. Like, the relationships always pay us over and over. And
yeah, I believe in serendipitous luck. So if, you know, I'm not that spiritual, I'm not that religious, but I do believe that you put positive energy in the air. Like, you know, people on my list, I think I said this when you were at my dinner in Cleveland.
Yeah.
That it was a lesson in just respond to your emails.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I respond to every single email. I mean, I don't get to them right away, but I get to them. And for the 20 that I respond to that lead to nothing, something else is going to come out of somewhere else. And whether it was related or not, I don't really care, because I'm putting out the karma, and that's going to come back. So I think that, you know, this is the whole thing of lists are people too. And, you know, if you're treating your list like and your list is your most important asset. So if you're treating your list like, you know, a one size fits all, that it's, you know, that they're not people, but they're just this mass that you're going to send something out and money's going to come back, which happens. But if you can look at the, you know, the granular level of it, that when someone emails you and asks you a question, within reason, you know, answer the question. Yeah. And so and I did that with you. I mean, you came out of my list, and, you know, and I respond, and whether it leads to something or it doesn't, it's irrelevant. And if it doesn't lead to anything, so what? I mean, I made a connection with somebody on my list, which I call my list my online family, because
Yeah.
that's the way you need to look at it.
Yeah. And that's another part of what you cover and Overdeliver in your new book. That's just was such a great reminder, because in the internet marketing world sometimes, which I'm definitely, obviously all of us marketers are a little bit more digital than we were when you probably
Yes.
started. And it's, man, unfortunately, like in any world, there's a lot of people that don't care about what they're sending or don't care about what they're doing. And it's just refreshing to see how your lifelong focus on treating your list right and treating people right and doing the right thing it really works incredibly well. Whereas obviously we all see those upshoots that try to do things quick and dirty and easy and don't care, and like nobody ever lasts then, because if they run into trouble, who's there to help them? Like,
That's like this is the book, and the subtitle is "Build a Business for a Lifetime: Playing the Long Game in Direct Response Marketing." So, direct response marketing can be a short game. It can be product to product, and it can be a very revenue event to revenue event. But if you play the long game and develop relationships and over the long haul, that's where I think the value in what you're building comes out. And that's an overriding premise in the book.
Yeah. And like you say, play the long game, then it works forever. It works over and over and over. And for me, not that I hadn't heard it, but I always I need to relearn things sometimes and rehear them. For me, the big impact was, man, I need to really be conscious of how I treat my list. I need to remember every time I click send that it is, it's a friend on the other side. How can I treat them? How can I support them? How can I
again, I think I was trained in a way. I mean, again, I don't know if I had a different background that I wouldn't feel differently. But in chapter 3 of the book is how paying postage made me a better marketer. And so by growing up in direct mail, that the not that direct mail is the be all end all anymore, but the fact that I had to take so much pain, it was so painful. And so we had to be so meticulous in what we did before hitting send doesn't cost you anything. Sending out 1 million pieces of mail at, $500 1,000 costs you a bundle. So even though we're still getting, 2% response, 3% response, you had to think about every single person you're mailing. Or if you didn't. So I think that discipline of direct mail, if you can take that and put it on your online marketing, it makes a huge difference. And you can hit send a lot more than you can mail, obviously.
Right.
But you don't have to. But every time you hit send, make that messaging mean something. Make it, one of the big things I see, and not with the marketers that I hang out with, who are really doing online marketing at a very high level, but it's going in for the kill too soon. And because they want to make the quick buck. And if you can be a little more patient and take your time, I think I have a line in my book. It's everything is not a revenue event, but everything is a relationship event. And so you always want to think about how continuing the relationship to lead to a sale, as opposed to, I have a list, they'll probably buy, let's just sell them, 4 times a week. And it's a philosophy. I don't want people to not mail their list. I don't want people to not make money, but there's I always say, don't just make money, deserve it.
Yeah, that's a good line.
It's from Bill Bottom.
Yeah. You talk about, obviously, which I totally agree with, you have to have that discipline in direct mail, because you had to invest a significant amount of money up front. And you talk about in the book how, I don't remember if it was the guy that you brought in from Reader's Digest or not, I forget, but how you guys ultimately got to the point where you knew that at your 18th month or your 24-month renewal, that's where you really started to make money, and had no problem spending hundreds or whatever the number was for each customer for 2 years. And like, just to be able to have that mindset, one is super key, that you are investing at that timeline, and that in 2 years.
But even for the guys, the people listening who are like have a much smaller business, you have to look at lifetime value. So,
Right,
you know,
right.
you want to look at, you know, it might not be 2 years, but it might be making sure you have a second and third product, so that if you can figure out how many people are taking the second and third product, what the total amount of money that you're going to get, you can afford to spend a lot more in the initial mailing or promotion. And then as you go on, it got to a point where we could do 24 months because
Right,
we'd
right.
accumulated a lot of cash. But again, it's being patient. It's slow and steady wins the race. And otherwise, you're just trying to make money on that first sale, and it's painful. I mean, you know, even with the internet being a lot cheaper, it's, you know, it's painful to try to make money on the first sale.
Yeah. And the other danger, I think, of the internet is it almost breeds a little bit of entrepreneurial ADD, because it is so easy and it is so cheap. It doesn't force any type of discipline or good behavior. And then we don't, you know, invest for long term or think about our numbers closely enough. And not.
Well, that's why the way I set up the book is like I talked about. I have an introduction, and I have chapter 1 is Overdeliver. Chapter 2 is original source, which is going back to the original sources of marketing fundamentals and see how they apply today. So, but those fundamentals haven't changed.
Yeah.
They're just in different, you know, the technology has put it on steroids, but it's way more powerful. So that, and then chapter 3 was how paying postage made me a better marketer. So that was the direct mail piece. So I set the book up so that I wanted to get all these foundational concepts in there early. And then I did lists, and then I did offers, and then I did creative, and then I did customer service and fulfillment. And then so that was an important structure of the book to kind of show where I was coming from in terms. I saw a review on Amazon, my only 3-star review, and the guy was like a professional reviewer. He was like, you know, so, and he wasn't wrong, but he basically said, you know, it was, the book is, you know, if you're new to marketing, it's fabulous. If you're not new to marketing, you know, basically nothing to see here. And you know what? To some degree, he's right. I'm not saying that, but I got to tell you that even if you're experienced, the reminders are just so important. And I respect his 3-star review. I mean, he says it's, you know, a good book and, you know, readable and all that. And I'm not annoyed by it either, because I think, you know, you can see why he would look at it that way. So, but I do think that, you know, the foundation, because the thing is, I didn't invent anything, you know. I mean, all these foundational principles are in other books elsewhere. I'm just telling them through my story. And I think that if there's a lot of people that don't know those fundamentals, there's less people talking about it today than there were. So a book coming out today with those fundamentals is something that I think is of use. And so that was very important for me, despite the fact, I mean, I in the new Star is Born movie, there's a scene in there where Sam Elliott, who plays the Bradley Cooper's brother, and he says, he's talking about music, and he says music is 12 notes, but told over the same 12 notes told over and over again. And it encouraged me to write a blog post about that I didn't invent anything. Most people don't invent stuff in their life. But if you can become the messenger for a particular, like RFM is a concept that's in my book. It's very important in direct marketing, recency, frequency, monetary value. if you've never heard of RFM, and I can tell you about RFM through a story, through a narrative that you can relate to, I become the messenger for that piece of information. I didn't invent RFM.
Right.
And so I think that's a really important, and I really encourage marketers to constantly take the principles and put them through that lens, their own lens of their experience, and it really makes a difference. So that's been, a very rewarding thing about the book for me.
Yeah, and I think, in some senses, you can never master the fundamentals. You have to always use them over and over and get better and better at them, right? And that's definitely the key. So it's important that this stuff is covered, because people haven't heard of it, or they're not good at it, or it's like, it was a really strong reminder to me to pay attention to my customers and pay attention to the list a little bit better.
Right.
And even though it's not the first time I heard it, but it just resonated in a different way, which I think is really key. And as you kind of move into in the later parts of the book, you talk about taking your own customer service calls and, dealing with angry customers, which is something to kind of, I think, touch on a little bit. And then towards the end, you talk about intentional dinners. So can you touch on those two topics for us?
Yeah. So the customer service thing is that, I encourage, if you're a CEO of a company, that if you want to listen to your customers. So you're watching your emails, you're responding to your emails, but getting on the phone and listening to what your customers are experiencing, both good and bad, will teach you so much. I also recommend, because I think it's chapter 7 or 8 is customer service and fulfillment. And I start the chapter saying customer service and fulfillment are marketing functions. They're not just anyhow parts of your business. And in fact, the repeat business is way more valuable than the new business. And so acquisition, while very important, is not as important as repeat business. And the things you learn, like I also say, I recommend, hiring a secret shopper. So if you can't get on the customer service calls, or you can't go through all the different funnels in your company and all the different things that are going on in your company, hire somebody to do it, like secretly. And then, I tell the story about someone who did this, and they had the person go through everything in the business, like, and buy something, return it, complain, and just basically become a troublemaker. And then, go through every possibility and see what happens, and ask one question every time. How did that make me feel? How did the person make me feel? And so that I can't tell you how valuable it is to learn those things. In fact, he learned that a really small thing that was it was game changing for his business, because he was like, he was selling like a low price book, and then another course for some hundreds of dollars, and then they brought him to a live event, and then at the live event they sell like a $15,000 coaching program or whatever, mastermind, whatever it is. And what he found, what the person who was the secret shopper went through that, bought the $15,000 program on a Friday, and didn't get a call from anybody in the company until the following Wednesday. And they were wondering why you had all these returns and all these refunds, and so they changed the whole policy where the day you got home was the day you got the call. Now that sounds so simple and so subtle, but it was so important, because you give someone 2 or 3 days to second guess a $15,000 purchase. So that was the example I gave, but there's a lot of examples all over the place. So so those are some of the things about, and then, just doing research before you go out with a product, finding out what your best customers would like next. I have a whole process that I go through that. And So there's just a lot of things in the customer service and fulfillment area that are just so important. And, I talk about rewarding those people better than you might like, even though it's a back end thing. I equate the fact that I'm an umpire in baseball and that being an umpire is like being a customer service rep. The only time you hear about it is if you miss a call. The only time you hear about it is if you screw something up.
Mm-hmm.
They just want you to be invisible.
Yep.
But I think that there's, value in rewarding, praising, and, fixing things in the customer service and fulfillment area of your business. As far as the thing about the dinners, we did, when I was at Boardroom, we used to do these dinners. We had experts for our newsletters and our books. And so every month we would bring together, 15, 20 of these experts, and all different types. We had people, doctors and lawyers and financial experts and marketing experts, and we bring them around the table, and we'd have what I call intentional dinners. And you don't, the idea, my attitude is, if you're gonna put together a dinner, set it up so that it's as intentional as you want it to be. I mean, you attended my dinner in Cleveland. Now, I didn't do the full Monty there because I had too many people. But if I was doing that for 20 people, not only would I seat you next to people that I'd want you to sit next to, but then I would also make sure that, I would put you on the spot to talk about something that is your expertise. And so the idea, I mean, there's a lot of different details about it, but I guess the overriding thing about the intentional dinners is that you want to have, everybody knows everything about this much. Yeah. And so you get somebody talking about what they're passionate about for a few minutes, that's what's going to make a dinner really special. And, imagine if you had 20 experts at a dinner and each one has an expertise and they talked about their expertise for 5 or 10 minutes, what that would lead to in terms of education, in terms of collaboration, in terms of all that stuff. And so I do that, wherever I can. And there's another smaller version of the intentional dinner, which is like the 6-person dinner. So this is one where you go to a conference or you're at an event and you look around for 5 other people, and 6 is the ideal number because you get a round table in a quiet spot in the restaurant. You got to have a quiet spot so you can talk. And it's a beautiful thing because you have a real, again, everybody shares. You have one conversation around the table. And I just think that trying to keep the conversation going in those kinds of environments is just so powerful. And you know what? I don't want to leave anything to chance. And if nothing happens, fine. But nothing's going to happen if you just leave it to chance and people are having random conversations. So yeah, I have it's all outlined in the book, and I really show people how to do it, and there's a lot more to it, but that's the basis.
No, thanks for sharing that, because I think that was really powerful here as well. It's just what impact you can make by just being intentional about that as well. And again, another thing just inspired me to really pay attention. And when I'm traveling or when I can host stuff, where I live or anytime like that, you can make a huge impact and make one connection that could, change somebody's world, like you said. And that's again, another part I really enjoyed in the book. So just to as we bring things to a close here, one of the things that is very true to form with the book and what you share in the book is the bonuses that are included. Personally, I think there's $10,000 of training in the bonus section.
Yeah, I over-delivered on the bonus. I mean, I was thinking about this. You title a book Overdeliver. Overdeliver is not even a word, by the way. I own the word. So overdeliver is not a word, but if I don't overdeliver on the bonuses, like how could I, look myself in the mirror? So I went crazy. I mean, I created a bonus page of 11 bonuses. Each one is powerful. Like, so I have I after the book went to press, I'm writing every week. So I have the lost chapters of Overdeliver. That's one of them. So I created a swipe file of 400 pages of packages and direct mail and all kinds of promotions going back to 1900 with the help of a direct marketing archivist, Jason Hart. And so that's I call that the copywriter's toolkit. And then I've got like a course that Jay Abraham put together, which it cost him like $200,000 to put together, and he just gave it to me and said, "I'm not doing anything with this anymore." And it's all digital. And then he gave me 21 keynotes that he's done. I have a full day with Perry Marshall that was a $2,500 event, and I just put the whole thing on digital, and you got the whole day. I've got a 270-page swipe file from Dan Kennedy. I've got 2 books, full PDFs of books, Dick Benson and Gordon Grossman, who most of the people maybe listening to this never heard of these guys, but they're the 2 geniuses of direct mail that I learned direct mail from, and keeping their name alive was really important to me. Like the original OGs, right? The original gangsters of direct marketing. And so they each wrote a book, and I have the whole book on PDF as 2 of the other bonuses. So anyway, it's like an incredible package. And if it's at overdeliverbook.com, and it's just, so I over-delivered on the bonuses.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, I'm still not all the way through them, because since you sent the book to me, I've been going through the bonuses and finished the book. And I mean, it's the stuff. One of the videos in the bonuses is worth more than things I've paid $3,000 or $4,000 for.
Yeah,
so.
it wasn't just the over-deliver. There was a bunch of other reasons why I did the package the way I did it. One of the things that I'm very proud of in the book is remembering my mentors. And I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Coco, but it's a Pixar film, and it's a kid's film, but it's not really a kid's film. And it's like an amazing film, and it's about Dia de Muertos, which is a holiday that's celebrated in Mexico, and it's like a couple of days, and basically you celebrate the dead, but you celebrate the dead. You don't I mean, you remember them, and there's some sadness, but you celebrate their lives. And so, and one of the lessons in the movie is that when you die, you're not really dead until you're forgotten. Once you're forgotten, then you're dead, like you crumble. And so the idea that by doing this book now, because too many of my mentors are dead. I mean, because when I was 20 and 30 years old, I gravitated toward 60 and 70-year-olds because they had all the wisdom. And so you can imagine that now that I'm 60 years old, that they're all dead. And so, in fact, someone said I should have titled my book "Too Many of My Mentors Are Dead," but but I think that the book is a celebration of so many of those. And now a lot of the people in my bonuses, like Jay Abraham and Perry Marshall, they're still alive. But there's also a lot of people like Gene Schwartz and Dick Benson and people like that who were dead and who taught me a lot and were the reason why, I was able to do this book. So that's another big reason for the bonuses, not just to overdeliver, but to overdeliver on my departed mentors who are still with me every day.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Brian. This has been a blast. I really appreciate you sharing time with us and going through everything. Again, everybody can check it out at overdeliverbook.com. It's worth every penny, and if it's something you pick up and reread a couple times a year, I guarantee you it'll grow your business and help you move the right direction. So thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.
Right. Cool. I guess on my iPad I can't turn off the recording, which is fine, but that works for my video editor. So
Yeah.
um,
Yes, I think that was a good interview because, you pulled stuff from the book, which was good. It made it easier for me. So thank you.
Yeah. No, I super enjoyed it, and it really meant a lot to receive it personally from you, and it's just always a great reminder and great lesson. And thank you again so much for having me down to dinner. That meant a ton to me, and it was fun to hang out. And I had a great conversation with Chris, and we're doing some business together.
Oh, good. I was hoping.
Yeah, so it's very good. And if there's ever anything I can do to help you on any front or anything like that, it would be my pleasure. So.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I will. I'll email you and shoot this over when it goes live in the next few weeks, and then I'd be glad to have you back on in a few months if you're interested. So we'll do that.
All right. Thanks, Gabe.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, Brian. I'll talk to you soon.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Today's Business Leaders with Gabe Arnold. Remember to subscribe on iTunes. For more information, visit today'sbusinessleaders.com.